What's happening, lads? It's Jake from Cop Logic here, and I am back doing a player comparison video for our new signing in midfield, Alexis Mac Allister, and I'm comparing him to Jordan Henderson. Now, the only reason I picked Jordan Henderson for this player comparison is because I think Alexis Mac Allister is more likely to take his spot than anyone else's. I don't see us dropping Fabinho for him. I don't see us dropping Thiago when he's fit for him, and Henderson's at the age where he should be looked at as more of a rotation player. His legs might be a bit knackered with heavy metal football over the years, so I'd expect Mac Allister to take Jordan Henderson's spot at least most of the time. I wouldn't say they're most like each other in terms of players, but because I think he's going to be replacing Jordan Henderson in the team, I've compared them to him. We've got stats, graphs, and injuries. So I've got some nice graphics there so you can see play comparison, and I've even taken a look at the injury record because I think for us that'll be important. But jumping into the stats first of all, we've got the statistic here on the left-hand side, and then we've got the players on either side. If there's any that aren't immediately obvious, then I will do my best to explain what they are. Jumping into the first one, which is goals. This does take penalty goals and non-penalty goals, so goals from open play and penalties scored. Alexis Mac Allister for the whole season has 10, whereas Jordan Henderson has none. I'd say Alexis Mac Allister's is good, but I know that's taken in penalties, and I know over half of those were penalties. But you'd still want your midfielder to score a couple goals. So Jordan Henderson having 0 is pretty low. You wouldn't expect it to be in the double digits, especially without penalties, but you'd still want it to be higher than 0. On that one, Alexis Mac Allister takes it. Assists, both of them are exactly the same, so there's nothing I can sort of differentiate between them here. They're both on 2 for the whole season. They're equal in that regard. Looking at goals and assists, I don't know why I kept that one in there. If you can do maths, then you can figure that one out for yourself. The non-penalty goals are important. The non-penalty goals is 4 as opposed to 0, so meaning basically Mac Allister took 6 penalties for Brighton. I would really only count the non-penalty goals because we have Salah. I don't think we'll take him off. Maybe Mac Allister becomes the second choice penalty taker, but I know we've still got Fabinho who can take a good penalty. Thiago has got the ability to take some as well. So I don't know if he's going to be on penalties for us, but it's good to have the option there. It's good to know that he's scored 6 penalties. I don't think I included how many he was given and how many he might have missed, but I don't think he missed one. And just a little caveat, the ones that I did see he took were all taken very well. So if we do stick him on penalty duty, we're good. Looking at the non-penalty goals, he gets 4 per 90. He's got 4 for the whole season, as opposed to Jordan Henderson's still 0. That means he's probably around average for a midfielder in the Premier League, I would say anyway. I might be wrong on that, but I think that's probably more what you'd expect from a midfielder. To have 0 is pretty low. To have 4, I'd say, is maybe about right. End of the day, he's got 4 non-penalty goals. Probably about average, in my opinion. More than Jordan Henderson, so in my eyes, that's a win. Looking at the expected goals, this does include penalties as well. I've included the non-penalty one below that, but he's got a 0.38 expected goals as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 0.05. Looking at non-penalty goals, obviously Jordan Henderson's doesn't change because he doesn't take penalties. Alexis Mac Allister does dip, but not significantly. He's still expected to score 0.23 goals per 90 minutes. So basically, he should score a goal every 5 matches or so. The expected assists is, in my opinion, more important. Obviously, it's nice to have your midfielders be in a position where they're expected to score. Not what you demand off them most of the time. You'd want them to be the one that passes and lays it off to one of the attackers because they're probably better at finishing. You've got 4.4 expected assists as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 3.6. That is per 90 minutes. Now, this isn't really something you can fault the player we're actually looking at this for. They've done everything right. They've laid the ball off. It's now up to the attacker to finish it. They've done everything. They've put on a play for the player. The player hasn't scored. But 4.4 per game as opposed to 3.6, he does create more things per 90 minutes that would mean a goal in comparison to Jordan Henderson. Looking at the progressive carries now, Alexis Mac Allister sits on 2.15 as opposed to 1.61, which means he carries the ball further in the way of the opposition goal in comparison to Jordan Henderson, which, especially late in the season, when you consider Jordan Henderson's position moved a bit further up the pitch with Trent's position inversion, as to say, as an inverted fullback. Out of possession, he was a bit of a deep-lying DM, but in possession, he was a bit of a progressive midfielder with, options to pass to a player like Jordan Henderson meaning Jordan Henderson was higher, which might be why the stat is lower because there's less pitch to progress into. But the fact that Alexis Mac Allister is on 2.15 when he might sit a bit further back than Jordan Henderson, at least at the end of the season, when we had our formation change or our role change. I wonder what Jordan Henderson's would have been before the role change, but progressive passes, he does lose out to Jordan Henderson. He sits on 5.43 progressive passes per 90 minutes as opposed to 8.19 per 90 minutes. I mean, this is just the difference in player, really. Some midfielders are progressive carriers. They carry the ball. They go box to box. Some are like deep line playmakers that can pass the ball from deep and create chances from deep. Alexis Mac Allister is just more of a carrier of the ball. He can still pass and become a passing option. But he sort of does, from what I've seen anyway, he sort of does that a little bit differently. So he'll be in a position where he'll pass sideways, then run forward, then ask for the ball back, and then maybe carry it a bit. Whereas Jordan Henderson probably just passes to Salah, or maybe passes to Trent, or maybe passes to Darwin, all of which would normally be in front of him, so it counts as a progressive pass. Looking at the shooting stats now, we have a total shots per 90 minutes for Alexis Mac Allister at 2.5 or just shy of 2.5. In my eyes, this is significantly better than Jordan Henderson's 0.88. He doesn't average a shot per 90 minutes. This, I think, would be a very useful ability or a useful addition to our team. If we have days or matches where the attack's not quite clicking and gelling well, you kind of want your midfield to step up, and even if it doesn't create a goal, the shot might lead to, either another shot from one of the attackers, or maybe a chance, or maybe even, an own goal or a fumble, or maybe even a foul, something along those lines. Basically just keeps defenders on their toes. If they know that the midfielders will also take shots, that means they have to be a bit more considerate of the midfield. They can't just focus on marking the attackers, because there's this guy here in front of them that will take a couple shots every match. You can't just go and mark Salah because Alexis will be there and he might try a shot every now and then. Looking at the success of them being on target, Alexis Mac Allister has just shy of one shot per 90 minutes on target. When he takes 2 shots or 2.5 shots per game, you kind of want it to be at least one of them be on target, but that's only per 90 minutes. Generally speaking, you wouldn't need that much longer to get one on target, but especially considering added time either way on halftime or in additional time. But that's still significantly better than Jordan Henderson's 0.19. Effectively, we're getting a midfielder that is getting a shot on target as often as Jordan Henderson takes a shot, which I think is an improvement. Not massively, but an improvement. The shots on target percentage, or that stat as a percentage, is 35 for Alexis Mac Allister, and Jordan Henderson's is 21.7. I kept that in there just in case you like percentages and wanted to see, what it was in comparison. But the average shot distance is just essentially what it says on the tin. Alexis Mac Allister takes shots a little bit closer, but the difference is negligible in my opinion. I think this is in yards, but it looks like Alexis Mac Allister generally takes his shots from 22.5 yards away, whereas Jordan Henderson's takes his from 22.8 yards away. So Jordan Henderson tries to take it a little bit further back. I think generally you'd want them to be a bit closer just because it increases the chances a little bit, but as I said, the difference is negligible. Looking at the passing stats now, passes completed. This is just the amount of passes that are completed per 90 minutes from each of them. I probably should have swapped the passes completed and attempted around, but I'll do that on the fly now. So the amount of passes attempted by each player, Alexis tries 57.51 passes per 90 minutes. Jordan Henderson exceeds that with 69.94, so just below 70 passes attempted per 90 minutes. Or the more important thing to note on that is the completion. The passes completed is 49.56 for Alexis Mac Allister. So out of 57 passes, or just over 57 passes per 90, he completes 49. So he probably misplaces about 7 passes, or he doesn't complete about 7 passes per 90 minutes, whereas Jordan Henderson's closer to 10 and 11, which does mean that his pass completion suffers in comparison to Alexis Mac Allister's. It means that Alexis Mac Allister has 86% pass completion success rate, and Jordan Henderson has 83.5%. The total passing distance per 90 minutes This will be per match because I'd imagine it'd be significantly larger for the whole season. The amount of passing distance per 90 minutes is 77.63 yards, as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 975.38. So Jordan Henderson does have a better passing distance in total per 90 minutes. So Jordan Henderson does have a higher total passing distance in comparison to Alexis Mac Allister. That is one he wins. He also manages to win the progressive passing distance. So Alexis Mac Allister manages to pass a total of 195.19 yards per 90 progressively, and Jordan Henderson manages to pass 256.41 yards also progressively. So another one Jordan Henderson takes the cake on. I should mention that this is just the difference in the player. As I said before at the start, there's probably better players I could have compared Alexis Mac Allister to, but because I think they're either gone, so won't be playing for us anymore, in Naby Keita or Oxlade-Chamberlain, and the fact that I think he might take Jordan Henderson's spot a bit more often, I've chosen to compare these two. It also does depend on where their positions are during the games. You tend to get more progressive passing distance if you sit deeper because you've got more space to pass progressively. The key passes per 90 minutes, Alexis Mac Allister does win this one, but only narrowly with 1.47 as opposed to 1.42. The passes into the final third, Alexis Mac Allister averages 4.71 passes into the final third per 90 minutes, and Jordan Henderson does 6.78. Probably as expected, the passes into the penalty area Jordan Henderson also takes as well. He sits at 2 passes into the penalty area per 90 minutes, whereas Alexis Mac Allister is just over 1. The progressive passes in general, obviously Jordan Henderson takes this one with 8.19 as opposed to the 5.43. Again, this is just a difference in player. If someone sits further down and doesn't run the ball up, then they will generally get better progressive passes because they've got more space to pass into. And we should also clarify that the players they play with as well, this is taken in Alexis Mac Allister playing with the likes of Karam Mitoma, which I'm not slating those players. I quite like Karam Mitoma and Evan Ferguson, but there's a significant difference between Karam Mitoma and Mohamed Salah. You might feel a bit more comfortable passing to Mohamed Salah than taking it on yourself, especially in Jordan Henderson's case. Whereas you might have a bit more confidence in yourself when your passing option is Danny Welbeck. Passes blocked for both players are exactly the same. They both have the amount of passes blocked at 1.34. Nothing really to say on this one. They both have the same amount of passes blocked per 90 minutes. The goal and shot creation, however, is a bit more skewed. So Alexis Mac Allister has 3.31 shot created actions per 90 minutes, and Jordan Henderson's had 3.14 shot creating actions per 90 minutes. Shot creating actions are basically just anything that they do that creates a shot. It doesn't necessarily mean it's scored. That will be the next stat, which is goal creating actions. Anything that they've done which creates a goal, Alexis Mac Allister has 0.25 per match, and Jordan Henderson has 0.34 per match. So generally speaking, Jordan Henderson has more success with creating goals in his actions per 90 minutes, but Alexis Mac Allister just manages to create more opportunities to get shots away. So generally it's probably negligible because they're both slightly better at one and the other's slightly better at the other. Looking into the defensive stats now, the amount of tackles per 90, Alexis Mac Allister has 2.18 as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 1.49. So looking at the defensive stats now, the amount of tackles per 90 minutes, Alexis Mac Allister beats out Jordan Henderson as he has 2.18 as opposed to 1.49, and that's just tackles attempted. That's not necessarily tackles won, but you can see there that Alexis Mac Allister tries more tackles per 90 minutes than Jordan Henderson. Again, I know a criticism I had of the team last season was that not a lot of our midfielders tried to tackle as often as I think they should have done, purely for the fact that if you don't try it, then generally players feel like they have more of a chance to run through knowing that they're not going to get tackled. It's probably some mental fear about giving away a free kick or maybe getting a yellow card or maybe even a red card, but generally speaking, you want your midfielders that when they're out of possession to be a bit more comfortable in making a tackle or at least trying one. The amount of tackles won is the stat below, and Alexis Mac Allister manages to win 1.22 tackles per 90 minutes, as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 0.96 per 90 minutes. So you'd like it to be a bit higher, but the difference is a little bit negligible, and considering it's not their specialty. Looking at the dribblers tackled, Alexis Mac Allister has 1.06, and Jordan Henderson has 0.73. the amount of dribblers challenged is 2.18 as opposed to 1.65. So Alexis Mac Allister has a bit more success with that. The percentage of that is 48.60 as opposed to 44.20. The amount of challenges lost, Alexis Mac Allister does lose out on this because this is one you don't want higher. But this is probably, again, something you can ignore. If you try more tackles, then you're probably not going to be as successful with them because you've got more that you can lose out on, especially when it's not your forte. And the difference is that insignificant that it's not really worth worrying about. You've got Alexis Mac Allister on losing 1.12 challenges per 90 minutes, whereas Jordan Henderson's losing out on 0.92. The amount of blocks per 90 minutes, Alexis Mac Allister sits on 0.81, Jordan Henderson sits on 0.88. That's again just probably something more to do with positioning than anything else than actual ability. But it's interesting to see Jordan Henderson takes that one as well. The amount of shots blocked, Alexis Mac Allister is on 0.06 and Jordan Henderson is on 0.11. So again, Jordan Henderson manages to block more shots, but I think that's just to do with the ethos of the team. With a Klopp team, you're, even as an attacker, asked to track back and defend and get back into the box and try and increase the amount of players that you got in your own box to defend. Whereas with Brighton, they might have been a bit more comfortable with it, especially last season in comparison. But generally speaking, that's probably again to do with how the team plays and what is being asked of the player. The amount of passes blocked, again, very similar, 0.75 as opposed to 0.77. I'd say they're both pretty average at blocking passes. Definitely not the best, definitely far from the worst, but generally the difference between them, something that can be ignored. They're very similar in that regard. The interceptions, Alexis Mac Allister has 0.69 interceptions per game. Jordan Henderson has 0.92. So Jordan Henderson's just shy of getting an interception per game. I mean, again, that could be to do with positioning, and that could be to do with being able to read the game, how you view the game, and just being able to predict what comes next. Defensively, they both make a very low amount of errors. Alexis Mac Allister makes 0.03 errors per 90 minutes. Defensively, Jordan Henderson, 0.04. In possession stats, the amount of touches per 90 minutes, Jordan Henderson does get more touches per 90 than Alexis Mac Allister. He sits at 77.25 and Alexis Mac Allister sits at 68.05. That I would put down to the amount of possession each team has. Liverpool probably, or at least generally, are a more possession-based team. So it's likely that you get more touches in a Liverpool team than you would in a Brighton team. But saying that, Brighton have had a good season, and so Alexis Mac Allister getting 68.05, as opposed to Jordan Henderson, 77.25, is nothing to worry about, at least in my opinion. So the amount of take-ons attempted, a take-on attempt is just basically when you feel like you can just beat the player, when you take them on and try and dribble around them. Alexis Mac Allister beats Jordan Henderson with 2.25 per 90 attempted, as opposed to 1 attempted. The successfulness of both of them is pretty much the same. The only difference is that Alexis Mac Allister will try more than Jordan Henderson per match, but generally speaking, they both are equally successful with it. The times tackled during a take-on, again, it's just the invert stat, essentially. Tackled during take-on percentage is just worked out the same way. The carries is the number of times the players control the ball with their feet, and per match, Jordan Henderson beats out Alexis Mac Allister at 45.44 as opposed to 41.13. Total carrying distance is the total distance in yards the players move the ball while controlling it with their feet in any direction. Alexis Mac Allister loses out against Jordan Henderson with this on 191.32 as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 210.4. But the more important stat, in my opinion, is the progressive carrying distance, which is the same stat as above, but only progressively. And Alexis Mac Allister beats him. He's on 95.8 yards progressive carrying distance per 90, and Jordan Henderson is on 88.6. So basically, Jordan Henderson's carrying the ball more, but it's not progressively. Alexis Mac Allister is carrying the ball less, but is progressing more often. This is also reflective in the carries into the final third. Alexis Mac Allister carries the ball 2.31 times into the final third per match, and Jordan Henderson's just shy of 2 per 90 minutes. The carries into the penalty area equally also reflect this. Alexis Mac Allister carries the ball into the penalty area 0.25 times per match as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 0.04. So it's not very often actually that Jordan Henderson carries the ball into the penalty area, which isn't really surprising when you think about it, but when you see a low number like 0.04 times per 90 minutes, that just basically means that it's very, very rare per game that he carries the ball into the penalty area. You kind of want your midfield to do that more often because it worries defenders. If your midfielder is carrying the ball into the box, then you kind of, it puts a bit of anxiety into the defender, as they've now got another player to watch and maybe mark or at least keep an eye on. Miscontrols per 90 minutes. Alexis Mac Allister does miscontrol the ball more. I just wanted to throw this in there because I don't want to just make it look like I'm painting Alexis Mac Allister in a good picture. He does miscontrol the ball more often, but it's only 1.47 per match as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 0.73. He is also dispossessed more as opposed to Jordan Henderson. He's dispossessed 1.12 times per 90 minutes as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 0.38. Now, the miscellaneous stats I put in here just because I thought there was a pretty interesting and funny stat. So the amount of aerial duels won per 90, Alexis Mac Allister is 0.78 as opposed to Jordan Henderson's 0.42. He loses 0.5 and Jordan Henderson loses 0.46. But that means that Alexis Mac Allister wins the majority of his aerial battles, which is interesting because I actually think Jordan Henderson might be taller than Alexis Mac Allister. So Alexis Mac Allister is 5'7" and Jordan Henderson 6 foot. Now, obviously he's smaller, but that's probably also more to do with age. Henderson's legs are probably way more knackered and he probably can't jump as high as Alexis Mac Allister. But I thought it was a pretty funny and interesting stat, so I kept it in there. So this is a player comparison graph. This is just using the exact same stats we've just gone into. But you can see there Alexis Mac Allister is generally better in terms of expected assists, shot creating actions, progressive carries, shots taken, shots on target, key passes, tackles, the amount of tackles won, the take-on attempts, successful take-ons, carries into the final third, but also he's more dispossessed. One of those you don't really want him to be better at, but he is. It's fine because generally everything else, some of them significantly are better. Take-on attempts are significantly better. Shots is significantly better. Successful take-ons is significantly better. Tackles is better. So I thought that was pretty interesting to put it in this sort of radar graph. I thought it was pretty cool graphic, so I put that in there for you. And we've also done it as a bar chart as well. So the expected assists, progressive carries, shot totals, all that. Alexis Mac Allister is in the blue. Jordan Henderson's in the orange. And taking a look at the injury record, I put the injury record in here because I thought it was pretty important for Liverpool. We tend to have a lot of injuries, especially in recent years. We had a lot of injury-prone players as well. So Naby Keita was always out with injury. Oxlade-Chamberlain was always out with injury. And I put this in there because if you look at Alexis Mac Allister's injury record, it's very good. Like in November 2020, and that was a virus infection. He was out for 35 days. That's a pretty, as his longest injury, as longest spell out, that's pretty good. Yeah, the back injury from 2021, for 3 days, and he missed 1 game during that. When you look at Jordan Henderson's, he's had foot injuries, he's had thigh problems, ankle injuries, ligament injuries, and he's had from 129 days out in 2017 to 82 days out in February. He had groin surgery, so he was out for a while. I remember that season. That was also the cursed season as well. It's good to see we've got a player that's not very injury prone, especially when we've been cursed with very injury prone players. Gomez, Matip, Naby, Ox, all those kind of players. So that was my Alexis Mac Allister and Jordan Henderson player comparison video. This was one of my first times ever looking more into the tactical, statistical, analytics side of the football. So it might not be perfect. If I've missed anything or if you think it would be worth including anything else in the next one, please let me know in the comments below. Similarly, if you'd want to see me compare any other players to any other players at all, be it like Thuram, because I know we've been linked to him, and Kone, Gabri Vega, Benjamin Pavard, people like that. If you want me to see them compared to some of our players, let me know and I'll do those videos. But yeah, thank you for watching this. Stay tuned. We've got some more transfer rumours, transfer updates, as well as some other videos planned in the pipeline. So definitely give us a subscribe. And if you don't mind, like and comment on the video. It helps us out massively. And I'll see you in the next one. In a bit, lads.